So our first speaker is another one of my authors. It's Walter Pullen, and he wrote the book Evolution of the Spirit. And he is officially an astrologer. You said you've done that for a long time, but then you got over into this. You've probably been in it for quite a while. And this book covers a lot of everything. So he's going to be explaining, even on the back, it's talking about karma, reincarnation, cycles of evolutions, everything. So he's going to have a lot to put in an hour. Okay, but our next speaker is Walter Pullen. Okay.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure and an honor to have the opportunity to speak here today. And last night I had an interesting dream. I dreamt that someone else was up here giving this talk, and I don't know where I was. I think I had fled in terror in the middle of the night or something like that, and so, yeah, and my replacement wasn't doing all that well, and so that really let me realize that only you can live your own life, and only you can follow your own dreams, where it's not following our dreams that's scary, but following our dreams is not scary, but it's the not fulfilling our destiny and not following our dreams. That is what's really terrifying. So if there's a message, follow your dreams. And a little bit about myself. If I were to describe myself in 2 words, I'd have to say spiritual cartographer, where of all the things that really, for my dreams, that really make me feel who I really am inside, that would be the things like astrology and mazes and labyrinths. That's something I really like creating and solving. And also now writing this book, Evolution of the Spirit. These are all ways that I would say are ways of researching, experiencing, intuiting, and then bringing it down and mapping it out to at least the degree that it's possible to in this world. So this talk will summarize some of the chapters from the book, where like about 3 to 4 chapters of it, but Evolution of the Spirit, it has 22 chapters, nearly 400 pages, and so this will really only indicate some of the information and insights or concepts in it, but at least will be a one aspect of existence. There are many more out there. And I'd like to say that this is a talk, but at the same time, I'd like to think of it as a guided meditation where the energies, we can really feel them inside and let them, each stage, each part flow through us. And so I'd say also that when I say journey through the universe, it's not really a journey through space as in a spaceship, but it's more really a journey through consciousness, through the different levels, where journeying through consciousness is, of course, a much deeper type of journeying. And so, like, why journey through the universe? I'd say that it lets us know where we've been and where we're going. And really, if it could really serve its purpose, it'd really allow us to all really remember where we came from, really remember the past, and also be inspired for the future and where we're going, and be inspired for the next stages that we can do individually and together. And to keep things in order and organization, I can divide the talk into 3 phases. There's the phases before human, before we came to this planet and inhabited human bodies. And then there's the second stage of being human and all the diversity and color in these human experiences. And then there's finally the post-human stage, like what happens after we stop being human and enter celestial realms of mastery. So let's dive in. And let's go back to the beginning. Really back to the beginning. Nope, farther back, before time existed, even before time existed, to the very beginning of it all, to the times where there was really only the divine, or the source, or God, or whatever language or word we want to use to describe the indescribable. And in that vastness, there is the just everything was all together. Everything was all one. If you have any doubts about us all being of us all having God within us, just think back to the beginning when that's all there was, before the universe existed, before it all existed. Now, if you try to think about that, what is this divine? What does the divine want? And you could say to the degree we can understand it, the divine wants to express itself and experience. And so because of that, the divine created the universe. And not just our universe, but all the dimensions, all the planes out there. And it manifested, it created, it, in a sense, the one became many. And we can consider ourselves as all children of the divine, or the universe as the garden of the divine. And so in this manifestation, the universe says, I'm going to experience, I'm going to have children in a sense, I'm going to boom, and the energy goes out, it flows through, each of the spiritual planes become into existence, and then each lower plane one by one comes into existence until finally it reaches the physical level. And once it reaches the physical level, we have what we would consider to be the Big Bang. Now, when the universe is created, each of us, we can be considered as divine sparks. All of us have that spark of divinity within us, and each of us, as representatives of the universe, similarly seek experience and expression. So we are all equal on that divine level. We all have the divine spark within us. And so in a sense, you can say the only difference between a piece of gravel in your driveway and an archangel is they both have the same equal divine sparks, but the archangel has more experience, or has been longer, at least as we think of time, in the worlds of existence, or has chosen to move on to higher levels of experience. So we're all divine, and we're all seeking experience and expression. And again, in that creation of the universe, there's like an involutionary process. There's a separation that takes place at first, where the expansion of the Big Bang, all of us, we spread out, we find our uniqueness, and once we reach that outermost level, then we turn around and start our journey back homeward. And so there's a level of evolution that takes place before we even reach the physical plane, where we're dropping through the spiritual levels one by one, and they're called elemental kingdoms. And there's a number of kingdoms of evolution where each of them is a stage of expression. And so we start with these elemental levels, and then finally we go down until finally we reach the densest level where we are here on the physical plane. And what happens once we reach the physical plane? We reach an enchanted state called existence. Now, this is the mineral kingdom of where basically the entities exist as rocks or crystals, and that's basically all that there is. You exist, but still, that's a real extremely powerful state or stage where to really have made it to the physical plane and to have that existence and to have a divine spark anchored within basically within a rock. Now, that stage is, as far as we would consider, it's relatively primitive. There's not really much that goes on when you're a rock. You exist. You don't really have your own independent bodies, like a seam of rock, or you're embedded in the earth, and you don't really grow and die like we do. We're attached to and basically live our existence as a rock until it's time for the spirit to move on to some other form of existence. So there's little differentiation, and but there is some evolution that happens within the mineral kingdom. Like you can have simple rocks, simple soft rocks, but you can move to like harder stones, crystals, and you can consider like a diamond as a pinnacle of the mineral kingdom existence. And eventually the minerals, they get a little, you might say, that they seek a little bit more interaction. And so there are some things that the mineral kingdom can do. Like there can be chemical reactions of various sorts. And that allows to the next stage, where once the lives within minerals reach that next existence, that leads us to growth. And growth is the hallmark of the next kingdom, the vegetable kingdom. And what you can do in the vegetable kingdom is really, grow, and like plants. And so you can really, there's that new level of consciousness, new level of expression where you can expand and grow, and you have a little bit more of your own body. You're still anchored in the earth, but now we're growing up out of it. And so, you have a body, it's connected, but there's definitely more differentiation. There's many more species of plant, and you can almost get different characteristics where some plants, they embrace growing, they grow really fast. Others are, even in the same conditions, they grow a bit slower. So there's more differentiation happening, and I should say that there is the difference between the body and the spirit. There can be a divine spark in a plant that's learning through it, just as we have divine sparks in our own body. But the plant itself can have its own existence, just like that if we are in a hospital and brain dead, our own souls or divine sparks may have gone on to other realms, but the body can still be kept alive through a machine. So anyway, in the vegetable kingdom, it grows and grows, and it's still, there isn't eyes or sense organs, but eventually those vegetables or plants, they want to do a little bit more than just grow. They want to sense and feel what's around them. And you can talk to your plants. Some plants you can do that with, and they're like the higher examples of the vegetable kingdom. So eventually, the vegetables they can start sensing, and that leads to the next phase of existence, the animal kingdom. Now, with animals, we truly have independent bodies. We can jump around and do all sorts of things and have relationships. So we really have even more differentiation, where animals have feelings. They're very much like us in many respects. And that's a truly unique way that we've evolved to levels where we can feel and interact. And with animals, a strong characteristic of that is instinct. They interact, but more on an instinctual level. They don't really decide in the way that we would. And so many of the things that they do are driven, they don't really choose that. It just It's just defined by like their DNA or by deep instinctual thought forms. And so like a lion, if a lion comes and attacks or eats us, it's not really good or bad, it just is. It's just following what's natural for it. And I'd also like to add that these different kingdoms, they refer to body forms that we express through, but at the same time, a kingdom is ultimately a level of consciousness, a level of interaction. So I'm describing these body forms, but really understand that it's really the consciousness is the key, what's behind the physical. So animals grow and through different animal forms, and over lifetimes through different animal forms, we get deeper types of experience. And eventually, if anyone has some pets, you may realize that, yeah, some of these pets they're almost human. They have human-like characteristics. Eventually, they have some, like what we'd call their own personalities. Like the animal maybe even seem to have intelligence, or they might seem to really care for you beyond just an instinctual level. Or especially with cats, have a certain free will. And those qualities really lead one to really differentiate or split from the instinctual body of most animals. And that leads us to breaking away, individualizing from the animal kingdom, to our next stage of the talk, which is the human kingdom. And so yeah, humans are a really unique stage of existence. It's a special honor to be a human, where we're like the bridges between spirit and matter, where we have both qualities within us. And what really makes a human human? Like, what's the ultimate qualities of being human? And you can say we have three qualities that separate us from animals. We have the ability to think, not just think in a normal way, but think abstractly, like have philosophy, or really think about deep topics that, like, you can't really teach a fish calculus, but we have the ability to learn those things and more. And as humans, we can love. Love is the second fundamental human quality. Love on a truly deep level that's not just based on instinct. It's truly our own love. And then finally, as humans, we have will. We have free will. And as humans, being like at the midpoint of existence, as humans, we really have the capacity for choice. We can choose good or evil actions, and certainly many humans do choose both choices, and during the long evolutionary process, we make mistakes, or we learn and we try things out, and we eventually learn what works and what doesn't, and we evolve toward higher goodness and higher qualities. And so choosing good and evil and really understanding that brings us to the Garden of Eden, where one aspect of thinking that is like the eating the apple or eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil was a depiction of like leaving the more unconscious animal levels of existence and coming into our own and being human and being able to make our own choices and being able to make our own mistakes. And so we get kicked out of that gentle Garden of Eden area, which is kind of like leaving the womb in a way and going out into this hard, cold, but exciting world and being able to make our own choices. So yes, so humans are fully differentiated. We all have our own unique souls. We all have our own unique capacities for thought. And then as humans, once we're out here, we each grow through experience and develop our own unique purposes, have our own dreams, and develop these qualities develop higher qualities over many lifetimes. So there's a few notes I should add about these. Number one is that I talk about these kingdoms or stages of evolution, and I want to emphasize that higher does not mean better. It just means that it's more experienced and more expanded, and Because in the same way that it's just a different ages. Like, I wouldn't say older children are better than younger. You don't love your older kids more than your younger kids, even though they are in a higher grade in school. So, we're all children of the divine. And also the kingdoms do overlap in a way. The levels of consciousness do that. It's not a strict put all beings in boxes. And so there is some, again, overlap where like an example is like the diamond, the highest of the mineral kingdom is, I'd say that that's a more interesting expression than like, I don't know, a random clump of plankton in the ocean. And so there's a blending of kingdoms. It's not just discrete boundaries between them. And another note is that these kingdoms that are being described are not the only kingdoms out there. Like, for example, let's consider fairies. Fairies are a unique form of existence. I really like fairies, and fairies they're nature spirits. But they're a bit more intelligent than animals, but they're not really in the same level that we would think of as human. So they're a bit between animals and humans. And another is angels. Angels are a vast, beautiful existence that is a bit beyond human, but there's some interesting analogies. There are separate tracks of evolution that entities can follow. Like, basically, fairies are to angels as animals are to humans. And so there's different tracks of evolution that entities can follow. And also, some animals are really, really evolved, I'd say. Like, let's consider dolphins and whales. I mean, they're like a special case. Yes, they're animals. They're classified as animals, but they really have some spiritual qualities so that we can really consider dolphins and whales as equal to humans in a number of respects. And then finally, extraterrestrials. That's a whole other ballgame, where extraterrestrials, there's a large amount of diversity of the ET existences, where you can say, well, there's like extraterrestrial minerals and extraterrestrial animals, but some of the beings that come by, especially those that are more like energy forms as opposed to just humanoid beings stepping off a spacecraft, I'd say they're a little bit different, maybe a little bit more than human. Hard to say, but so just realize that the things that I'm talking about here are not the only levels of existence. Our universe is very vast. So let's go back to being human. And so now that we're human, what do? Well, we develop ourselves and experience ourselves in several ways. And there's physical development where, at least when starting out, we try to grow personally, like we try to get strong or groom ourselves or whatnot, and then we try to acquire things, like acquire money and houses and good things like that, and this is all natural. There's nothing bad about it. And then maybe we don't just acquire, but we decide to create or build things, and let's manifest a career or manifest artwork, and that's cool. And then on physical levels, we can do things like form relationships, be a manager, be a boss, and raise a family. All these are things that can take place on physical levels, and that's all part of our development. And then perhaps later on, and also simultaneously with that, we do our emotional development, another aspect of human personality, where at first we just learn to have emotional variety. Like, we may encounter or hear about people that seem to be bad or completely lacking compassion in their actions, and really they just haven't been around long enough to develop those qualities of compassion and love. I wouldn't say that they're bad, they just haven't been around long enough where those qualities have been cultivated and have come forth. And similarly, that once we do learn to experience love and all the qualities, then eventually we bring forth emotional appropriateness, like that over time we develop ourselves to have a emotional, if you get cut off in the elevator and then you get all annoyed and yell and something like that. And so eventually we learn that once we learn to have the capacity to express emotions, then we learn a little bit about how to have appropriateness for them. And then finally we learn later on how to not let our emotions run away with us, where you can have emotions are good, but being able to know when they're appropriate or how to use them in the right manner. And that brings forth that happens just over many lifetimes. And then finally, there becomes a time where we realize the enchantment and magic of our world, and our emotions begin to start being more, we don't seem to get as angry as much because we see the beauty in everything and the purpose in it all, and then the emotions gradually sort of get a refinement. And then finally moving on to mental, which is the third part of being human, where mentally we develop ourselves intellectually, and we develop smarts, like just intelligence. And that's not something that we have or we don't, but it's something that we can develop and always learn and grow over time. And also creativity or abstract thinking, being able to really think of something new and express ourselves, that's an important quality that happens over time. And then finally, flexibility, where many people, we have our specific thoughts and we stick with them and we're focused on them and we don't move from our opinions. And you can see that in politics a lot, but eventually we learn some mental flexibility. We learn to be open-minded. And then finally, and this is a hard one, is mental control, being able to quiet the mind and really let the more inner self come through and not having the mind go over and over and over. So that leads us to, well, basically all this character development that happens over numerous lifetimes. Eventually, we realize, well, there's physical, emotional, and mental, but if you see there's something really missing up there, a quality missing that many of us have, and what all this leads to is wanting more than just that. This leads us to the spiritual path, and where we want more than just what we see and what we think and what we feel. What we really want is to feel to have more, to have the spirit, to have intuition. And so let's go into, really what I could say is the talk is in two halves. There's before the spiritual path and after the spiritual path. And so the spiritual path begins, like, we can say, halfway through the human kingdom. And so let's dive into what the stages of the spiritual path. Like, there's a lot within spirituality, and let's see where that goes. So first of all, the stage one is being interested in the first place in spirituality. And I have to say that, not everyone is interested, and not everyone is aware or able to see have that spirituality within them. It's like you can hear you've heard the call, so to speak. When you first get interested in spirituality, it's like there's long golden trumpets, and there's the saying, like, return, here's spirit, come home. And if you hear with the inner ear, you can hear that, and you can aspire and have that fiery aspiration to grow and return home and develop and love. And, well, I should say that this is really developing spirituality, not religion, where not everyone who is, there are many people that are, you can say, religious, but not necessarily spiritual. And similarly, some of the most spiritual people aren't really part of any organized religion. Although in spite of that, this stage, once someone becomes interested in spirituality and has heard the call and is seeking and becomes a mystic, there is some religious terms like being born again, and that's an example that really means that you're beginning a new life of spiritual seeking. So what happens in this stage is this is when we explore and learn, when spirituality is new and exciting. And in classic theosophy, this stage is called being an aspirant, where you aspire towards spirituality. And also about this stage, one is you can say that you've really mastered at least the physical body, where like there's no drug addictions or anything like that holding you back, so that you can really sense the deeper emotional and mental and spiritual levels. And so for another example, this is where one might like hear about karma and learn about karma. So eventually one moves on to the next stage of commitment. This is where one has stayed at the base of the mountain long enough, looking up at the mountain of growth, and then realizes it's time to pick a path, any path, there's many of them, and start climbing. This puts the path in spiritual path, so to speak, where in this stage, this is where one really works on themselves. This is where one really develops qualities, higher qualities, refines their energy, practices various techniques, has usually some sort of a daily practice, where here it's not being a fair weather, so to speak, spiritualist. Not where I'll be spiritual when I feel like it, but right now Jerry Springer's on, so I'm going to go watch that, or so again, this stage is marked by a lot of work. It's not for everyone, and that's okay, because spiritual growth isn't a race. We're all in this together. There's no, time's ultimately an illusion. We're all expressing ourselves, and it's the journey that's important, not as much as the destination. So, and in classic, this stage is called being a disciple, and the key word for being a disciple is discipline. This doesn't necessarily mean one has a guru. It can, but it more is an inner attitude of having that focused commitment where no matter what, like I'm recentering my life around spirituality. I'm not just having my 3D life over here and I'm spiritual occasionally. And I'm really reorienting my life so that it's all about spirituality. And so, again, there's another rising of here, where about this time, due to the focus and discipline here, one has gotten their, become a master of emotion. That doesn't mean they're unemotional. It just means that their emotions are more appropriate and feeling and loving for the times at hand. And so, anyway, another example in relation to karma is that while the aspirant learns about karma, the disciple really is focused on resolving their karma and looking at their weaknesses, being honest about them, and working on overcoming them. So next stage is all about service. And this is where being a true light worker comes in. After you've really worked on yourself enough, there's we love ourselves, we've done enough for ourselves, and really it's time to turn outward and join with others. So this is really a focus on selfless service, where it's really not all about us anymore. It's about the world once we reach here, where here we realize oneness. We really realize that we're all one, and that and really all focusing on unconditional love, and really bringing that love out, not because we know that we should be doing that, but just because that's a natural expression of who we really are. And it comes forth naturally. It's not like service can be sometimes a little bit scary. It's like I'm giving up my own power or something like that. But really, at this point, it's really an expression of our spirit. I mean, it comes for us naturally, because when we realize we're all one, doing something for someone else is like the same as doing something for ourselves. And so that's why at this level, there's really a group orientation. I'm not just doing things on my own. I mean, I'm doing my own part, which is all very important, but really there's a connecting with a larger body. I'm realizing that I'm part of a real group here. And so there's a lot of group orientation, group initiation, a lot of group interactions going on there. And so there's a time at this point where like the first experiences of cosmic consciousness come forth, where there's a real deep experience of really feeling really high levels of spirit, where they call this the transfiguration level or experience, where in the classic example, it's like on the mountaintop and the heavens open up, and then you hear God affirming you as his son or daughter. And that's not individual experience. It's just recognizing that really that you know that you're a spark of the divine. It's no longer just a mental attitude. We realize that you know it in your heart that you are a spark of the divine, and that's deep, indescribable, but it really changes your life. From then on, you're moving forward as a being of light, as a light worker through every part of our life. And this stage is traditionally called being an initiate, like having true initiation. But initiation isn't the classical view of some like secret society or some personality, here's your certificate, aren't you cool? But really, once you are initiated in a real sense, what it means is that you get extra work. And there's a lot more, because they're not called light workers for nothing. And also, about at this stage, there's you've mastered the mind. The mind is quiet. Around this time, you've really mastered the threefold personality: mind, emotion, body. They're all in sync, working together to fulfill purposes. And in relation to karma, this is where I've not just learned about karma, resolved my own karma, but now I'm helping other people with their karma. The focus isn't on yourself anymore. It's like about what's world karma, what are the issues what's the world need at this time, and then being able to see it and then work for it. Now the stages keep moving on, but I have to say at this point they're going to be a little hard to describe, but I will do my best. And at this point, once you've really mastered the classic aspects of being human, then there comes a deep surrender where up until this time we've been down here on earth, but we've been reaching up to spirit and sometimes having experiences and reaching out to help our fellow men. But at this point there's a big inversion where now we're flipping it over and we're going to be a spirit having a human experience. So your consciousness moves completely up to spirit levels, and then now you're going to be reaching down for future interactions. And so it's like an example where for some of the deep sacrifice, it's like up until this point we've been the reincarnating self. Each incarnation we take our qualities, we build up like the soul lotus. It's like a lotus flower that really is all the qualities from each lifetime, and we put it in there, and then we build it up and we build this invisible spiritual mansion, but finally it's done. And so what do you do when it's done? We let it go. And so there's a nice image here on the Transformation Conference, the program here that has a lotus and has a person emerging from it. And that's really a deep image here. It's like what happens is that yes, I've completed my learning, and now it's time to graduate. It's like I am jumping out of it's like there's a birth. I can no longer stay in the womb, and it is time to emerge and really be born into the true realms of spirit. And so about at this point, we've evolved enough that we really don't need to physically incarnate anymore, because there really isn't anything here that we need to really learn, but still we choose to, because there's a lot more ways and things to serve. So there's still more need to serve. And so traditionally this is called the arhat level, and more traditionally like a saint in a manner of speaking. And at this point we've really understood all aspects of spirit or intuition. So now we've really gone to really know about spirit and love and all those spiritual levels. And then finally, the karma-wise, at this point we are not only in relation to karma, it's here really we're one with karma. In other words, we've resolved our own karma, we're helping the world with their karma, but at this point, we're sort of so one with the universe and one with the laws in it that, we work in harmony with them, like we are laws of the universe. It's not really any separation. It's not really something that you learn about or do, but it's just something that we are. And now, finally, after this, the next stage is finally what we call being a master. Finally, what we call the ascended master, stage 5 of ascension. And this is where, again, one is either called a master or sometimes an adept because they're an adept at all aspects of being human. And at this point, one realizes that there's like what we'd call a lodge of masters. There's a whole new level of existence that we can interact with. Like sometimes it's called the spiritual hierarchy, or the Great White Brotherhood, or the Order of Melchizedek. There's a lot of names out there for it, but really there's a whole new area where one is more planning aspects of evolution on this world, as opposed to we in the human kingdom that more like implement it. So there's more abstract concepts of like plan and purpose. But yes, at this point, it's really the end of the human kingdom. And in classic theosophy, this is called the revelation, where you emerge, the plant breaks the surface of the ground, and a whole new world of spirit, a much more real world. There's like a rebirth into the spiritual kingdom, and of a whole new levels. So here's a chart from the book, and this has a summary of the kingdoms, where on the left there's the descending through the various planes of existence, and then next at the bottom shows the mineral, vegetable, animal, and human kingdoms, each being able to grow and express on additional levels of consciousness, moving up to being able to express emotions and thoughts, and then finally evolving to spirit, which is what humans do. And then the few alternate cases of like fairies and angels who are still evolving their own qualities, but they don't have physical forms. And so, in the planes of existence, you can have or not have different be expressing on different levels. But humans, we're kind of unique because we express, our bar is really high. We're both physical and spiritual. And here's another chart from the book that deals with the progression from kingdoms, where starting on the left from divinity, we express through mineral and elemental kingdoms, and then move through vegetable, animal, human, and then superhuman kingdoms after being a master. But still, it shows there's a few tracks of evolution here. Like some animals can be, like things like butterflies or birds, they become fairies. But other types of animals, like mammals, they're classically said they become human. And there's a few unique spirits that can jump from phase to phase. Like occasionally a fairy will become a human. So if you see a really unique soul that has like fairy-like qualities, that might not just be a random interest. And then there's also where humans can split, not just become superhuman, but can jump into the angel kingdom if you want to. So if you really like angels, it's possible to actually be an angel if you want to, on the eventual return path to divinity. So another important point is that the master keeps growing. You're an ascended master, and yeah, there's still many more stages and ways to grow. And so the next stage after that is, well, it's like being a master of masters. I mean, some masters have really been around for a long time. They help guide others, and it's called being a chohan, which means chief. And at this point, again, since we've left the human kingdom, there's no physical body anymore, but still occasionally you can manifest one. I mean, the existence is all this light here, and at the center there's a body that can be manifested if you want to. Usually you don't, but really what you are is this vast radiance that's this huge, enormous aura of energetic light and interactive consciousness. And at this point, one really makes a decision using their liberated spiritual will for what do they really want to do in the future. And it's interesting, like as above, so below, that even at these vast exalted levels, there is a sort of a correspondence to earthly careers. And I'll show, here's another chart from the book, and there's really is a whole chapter on post-enlightenment paths, or a whole chapter on what do ascended masters do all day, if you've ever wondered. And there's basically some earth analogies. There's things like on a much, much higher turn of the spiral. There's sort of things like being masters that teach, which is like, of course, being like a graduate student or a professor, and still continuing the evolutionary process. And then there's exalted post-enlightenment paths that sort of correspond to caring, or like being like raising a family. And then there's like deep, powerful things that correspond to politics, or there's creative aspects that correspond to manufacturing, or doing various service jobs, or even military service, or even just taking time off and having nirvanic bliss. And this doesn't mean, again, to put people into boxes, because masters and that deep stage is so beyond words, but it does show that we each have our own unique purpose, and we can realize it and express it in whatever ways call to us. So finally, we reach stage 7, the seventh and last stage of the spiritual path, which I call liberation. And at this point, we really reach what I'd say are divine levels. In other words, the divine spark, which came forth from divinity, has gone through the whole cycle, and now it's basically returned home. And so the divine spark it completed its experience, and it's like, hey, I'm back. And this also corresponds to, that's like returning home, but also there's an aspect of this which is like leaving home, which is like graduating from college or moving away from home, where it's like our parents say that, hey, you've graduated, now you should go get a job and do what you really want to do, and not have to depend on me anymore. And so this image here of an individual standing on Earth, you can see that they're very big and vast, and they, in a sense, they're not as big as the Earth, but they're pretty close, and they're really a new young adult, so to speak. And there's some esoteric words to describe what happens here, and like one is resurrection, which means that really the divinity has been resurrected back to to those levels of divinity. And then what happens is there's like a little bit of a transition. There's like, yes, I've reached divinity, but I'm still like next to the earth that gave birth to me. And so there's a little bit of a cutting the apron strings, where I'm like separating from the earth, or going past the ring past knot, so to speak, of the planet or the life wave that I came from. And then there's finally a little bit of even what they call a refusal, which means that there are many other ascended masters now that are taking care of the earth, and in a sense, I'm not needed anymore. I'm now, the world is still progressing, but now it's really time for me to make take my own path in the universe, and really make my own, find my own destiny, really, in the universe. And that leads us to, well, first of all, there's a stages summary. And so these 7 stages this is again another chart from the book, and it describes these various initiations and what one is called as they go through them, and how through each one masters a certain plane of existence. And also I make a crude estimate of the number of people in each stage on Earth at this time. And right now it's sort of exponential, where there's only a few masters on the earth, but there's many seekers and aspirants. But that really only is how it is at this time. I mean, right now, the numbers of people on many of these levels are coming in, and these numbers on all these levels are rapidly increasing as the new waves of spiritual children are coming in. So these numbers are the way they are now, but in times in the distant future, there may be where people that aren't on a path are in the minority instead of the people that really are. And so, anyway, so the last stage is our really cosmic stages. Once we've gone through past the 7th stage, really graduated, liberate ourselves from the planet, then there's really moving out into a completely new existence where there's a vastness of, like all of us, we've come through the planet, and the planet has been like our parent. And we're even on a planetary level, you can say that even the whole spiritual hierarchy of masters, that's like the heart center of the planet. And the whole human kingdom is like the throat center of the throat chakra of the planet, but on a huge level. And so these vast beings, it's like we individual humans, we are like cells in the body of the human race. And so at this planetary logos level is where you can really like breathe out and create new divine sparks within yourself. You're at this level where you're like a creator yourself. But still, even divinity can evolve or reach levels of expression. So moving on, there's like sets of planets, chains of planets that evolve in sequence, and you can oversee sets of planets. And then there's being a solar system, or reaching a level of a solar logos, where you have entire planets as like chakras in your body. And it keeps moving, evolution keeps happening, where again the divine itself is growing, the universe itself is expanding, and where there's an entire galaxy is one great being which has solar systems as cells in its body. And when you look at science, there's galaxies themselves form clusters, and so those galactic clusters are entities, each with like galaxies as chakras in their body. And so when you keep expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding, eventually you can have the entire physical plane as a great being. And finally, when you bring in all the planes together, you can say that like each plane is like a chakra in the body of divinity, or the body of God, as we would want to say that. And so at this point, you can say we've become our divine spark has emerged into its own and can like be its own Big Bang in the future and create its own universe in the future. So that concludes this talk, and I'd like to say that I have a website, www.astrolog.org, and my email and on Facebook is astara@msn.com, and there is I also have a brand new, only a few hours old Facebook page for my book, Evolution of the Spirit. So thank you very much, bless you, and lots of love.
Well, Walter, there's no time for questions and answers.
Oh, well,
You came down to the wire. We got maybe 5 minutes. Is there anyone that has a question that we can answer in 5 minutes?
Yeah, if not, I'll be in the...
I was just thinking, otherwise you can talk to him out there at his table. That's okay? You have something? Okay. Instead of having me move that, come up over to the microphone there. Okay. Because he's going to be available out at the table if he want to ask other questions. Okay.
I really enjoyed your speech here.
Get up to the mic. Okay.
Oh, I really enjoyed your speech here, and I wanted to expound on one concept that Dolores has brought in on the new Earth, and I was wondering your thoughts as far as the concept that there's going to be, the Earth is going to split into a different dimension where we're going to have a new Earth. And do you think the seekers or the spiritual are going to go into the new Earth and evolve in a different way, and then the ones that need the evolution or the evolving into are going to stay? Is that kind of follow the? You understand where I'm going with this?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it is important to realize that, yes, we are growing as individuals, but so is the Earth growing. And so the Earth is, it's a being like us, and it goes through its own initiations and its own phases. And so yes, the entire Earth is going through a big transformation, and it's in the process of doing it now. And so it's really exciting. And you can say that each of us is like a reflection of the change going through the Earth at this time. And indeed, so yes, there's great changes happening. They're really beautiful, and the Earth is moving forward, and in a sense, we're helping bring it forward. Each little cell, each of us is moving forward, bringing the Earth forward. And yeah, and so yes, the Earth is, just as we overcome our bad qualities, the Earth may overcome its. And so yeah, I don't, like, quote unquote unspiritual people don't know what's happening with them, but everything is part of the divine. So even if there's a split, then I mean that's okay. We all go to where we are meant to be and where we're most comfortable.
Well, we're down to the wire. So if anybody has any questions, they can talk to Walter out here. He's going to be signing books, and he'll be available until the next speaker then. Okay, thank you. And thanks, Walter.